Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, thanks a lot, Jess, and thank you for tuning into the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Rich Walsh will be joined by Chris Muller in a matter of moments at the 93.7 The Fan Cam. So give us a call at 412-575-2600 is the number. Definitely have a lot to talk about tonight. And one of the things I want to start with, Chris, I know it's probably a big topic on your show today. Bill Hillgrove calling it, a career for the Steelers. He's still going to do Pitt football and Pitt basketball. But when I think of Steelers football and growing up listening to games, I think of Bill Hillgrove, that legendary, iconic voice, that deep voice. What a career he had. And he's one of three guys that were play-by-play announcers since 1938. They only had three play-by-play guys since 1938. And they'll have a fourth year soon, whenever they hire someone.
Well, that's the same way it is with coaches in this organization, an institution. I've been on this earth, Richie, 38 years and a lot of change, almost 39 years. Bill Hillgrove was the voice of the Steelers for 30 of those. I always thought he called a fair game. I never thought he did what you hear some guys do as hometown announcers and almost go out of his way to go after the other team. I did enjoy when Bill would feel like a call had gone against the Steelers that should not have gone against the Steelers. His exasperation I loved. But he's the soundtrack to Steelers games for a whole lot of people. And that's one heck of a legacy. And you're still going to get to hear him, of course, because he'll be doing Pitt football and Pitt hoops. But an excellent 30-year run on the Steelers play-by-play. Yeah,
I always enjoyed Bill and Dick Grote when they called out the refs in Pitt basketball games. That is classic.
I mean, just like I said, the exasperation. Sometimes when I would be unable to watch specifically a Pitt basketball game and I would have it on in the car or whatever, you'd almost have to go back if you were in the DVR era. You would almost have to go back to that exact moment in the game and see just what they were fed up about. Oftentimes it was, of course, something that seemed to warrant that, but occasionally they would get very upset and then I'd watch the game and I'd say, that seemed like probably it was a pretty good call by the referees.
We're basically in the same generation. When I think of Steelers play-by-play guy, for me it's Bill Hillgrove. When I think of Pirates, it was Lanny Fratteri. I know a lot of guys would compare Bill Hillgrove to the Bob Prince. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to really hear him. I didn't get a chance to hear him. Who was the guy, I forget his name, the guy before Bill Hillgrove, Jack Fleming. That was before my time too, kind of. So for me, it's Bill Hillgrove and Lanny Fratteri, and Mike Lang, of course, for the three sports.
I mean, I think if you're under 45 years old, those three voices pretty much defined all three of the teams in town. And we were privileged, I think, in all three cases to have legends in the field, guys who were extremely well respected by their peers. I mean, how many people know that Lanny Fratteri, for example, is on the call for the infamous Bob Knight sends chairs spinning across the floor at Assembly Hall? Lanny Fratteri is the call on that. So these guys called memorable moments, in his case, even before he was calling Pittsburgh games. But I think we've had a very good run. If you're around, like I said, 45 or younger, you've only known really elite play-by-play work in this town.
Whoever's calling the games this year, I wonder which guy they're going to be calling at quarterback. I was at the Combine for a couple days. You're hearing some rumors float around there. Obviously, we were able to find out that there's nothing really to the Steelers and Justin Fields. That pretty much wasn't going to happen. But, it seems the feeling that I get just being out there, being around people, talking to people, that it's going to be a quarterback that they're going to try to find a diamond in the rough. Maybe the guy from Tulane. I know they're interested in Jordan Travis, guys like that you might be able to get in the fourth-plus rounds. And I think a sweet spot for maybe a quarterback would be one of those two draft picks that they have in the fourth round, those back-to-back picks.
Yeah, picks 120 and 121. A guy like Spencer Rattler's probably gone by then, Richie, a guy that was at one point thought to be the #1 quarterback prospect in the country, had a very bumpy college ride, has a very good arm and very good tools for the position, even though he's not particularly big. You mentioned the kid from Tulane, but I think anybody that they would pick at that point is sort of a long-term backup or a project player that if Kenny Pickett doesn't work out, okay, maybe they groom to try to take over the job, but you pick a guy that late, you're usually going to have to get over one or two flaws in their game to make them a big-time NFL quarterback. The big story for me, Richie, is that most of the people in the know just continue to suggest or hint towards the idea that the Steelers would like to bring Mason Rudolph back. And I will say for about, I don't know, the 35th time, let's say, that would, I think, put in Kenny Pickett's back of his mind, hey, if I screw up early in the season, they're not going to hesitate to go to this guy. So I really wonder how much the Steelers want Mason Rudolph back and what kind of a push they're going to try to make to bring in, say, a less threatening veteran like a Ryan Tannehill for the position.
Yeah, I could see it going both ways, and I think there is a really good chance. I mean, they're going to make an attempt to bring Mason Rudolph back, and from all accounts, they want to try to bring him back. From what I understand, that they're going to offer him some kind of deal, but you know, if he hits free agency, he's going to potentially make more money, and maybe he thinks he's going to have a better opportunity. Now, the one question that I did ask a lot of these guys out there is, you know, if you bring a Mason Rudolph back, will there be like a fractured, you know, divided locker room? And everyone kind of, you know, downplayed that when I asked that question, which I didn't really understand, because for me, if you're in that locker room, and I know one guy helped me to get to where I was and I was able to put up big stats with this guy, and the other guy couldn't, of course, who am I going to side with? You know, I mean, just compared to like things that we do every day, playing golf. You know, I want to play golf with certain people because I know they're good. I don't want to play golf with these people. So I feel like athletes are the same way. I still think it could potentially be a disaster if you have those two guys. And it's almost like Mitch Trubisky, when he first started here, he was looking over his shoulder at Kenny Pickett, and it might be the same way this time around if they do bring Mason Rudolph back.
I will reiterate, I think that bringing Mason Rudolph back and their seeming desire to do so is strange, and I wonder where it's specifically emanating from within the hierarchy of that front office because of everything you just said, because there are already guys like Deontay Johnson specifically who have publicly thrown their support behind Mason Rudolph. Privately, I suspect most of those guys just saw what the scoreboard was reading in games where Rudolph was playing and said, well, he's getting me the ball, we're scoring points, pretty good situation. It's unusual to me. They seem to have two goals, Richie, that I don't think really can exist side by side, can exist concurrently. Get Kenny Pickett a true third year where he gets to show what he can or can't do to get a referendum on him, and bring Mason Rudolph back. I don't think you have an easy time doing the first one of those things if the second one also happens.
Did you think, I mean, you heard Omar talk in the Sportscast a little bit ago, and I'm sure you heard him earlier today. Do you think it sounded like Omar's really in his corner? Yeah, he's their guy. He's the only signed quarterback on the roster. But it does sound like, if you read between the lines, that they're definitely going to bring someone in here to compete. I don't know if everyone's completely sold on Kenny Pickett right now.
I don't think the entire front office is sold. We've seen reports that there are murmurs that guys think Mason Rudolph is better, or that Kenny, at least at the very least, isn't the answer, Richie. So the one thing I don't necessarily believe, I think Omar's too smart to rock the boat with any kind of controversial statement. I will believe that it's a real competition when I see it. Do you even know what a real competition would look like? I don't. How do you really split those reps? I think it's very infrequent where you would actually have a true dyed-in-the-wool quarterback competition where there is no preordained favorite. You could say that the Steelers did quickly here try to divvy up the reps evenly. We'd all know that based on where they drafted Kenny Pickett, he would have the inside track whether they would say that publicly or not. Yeah,
we got to take a break, but we're going to take some phone calls about this subject. Get on the phone line, 412-575-2600 is the number. Back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Coverage. Walsh along with Chris Muller for tonight's show. And let's hit the phone lines. 412-575-2600 is the number. We got a lot of guys that want to talk about quarterbacks. Let's start with JB out in Shadyside. What's up, JB?
Yeah, hey, how are you guys?
Good, thanks for calling.
Good. So I think this notion that Pickett shouldn't be challenged at all is totally ridiculous. I mean, this isn't like JV football. It's professional football.
Yeah.
If he can't rise up to the challenge that Rudolph presents to him, then he's not worth keeping. He could rise up, maybe, to the challenge and prove himself to be better than Rudolph. But if he can't, then he's replaced. I mean, after a few games. I don't think it's that complicated.
I get what you're saying. I want to bring Mason Rudolph back. I like Mason Rudolph, and I think he's a better quarterback right now. Maybe Kenny Pickett takes that next step in the third year, and this is a crucial year for him, because if he doesn't, obviously he's going to be a career backup at best, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the trajectory he's on already, because his numbers are so underwhelming. I don't care about the wins and losses. The rest of the NFL would view him as such. I think the reason, obviously I don't really disagree with anything the caller said. If you can't handle competition, too bad, you lose your job. The problem is, and I backed the guy and said he was really good, and I never expected him to be able to do it, but you're still left with Mason Rudolph at the end of the day, maybe coming in for the last 13 games of a season in the caller's hypothetical right there. We might all have thought Mason Rudolph was one heck of a story last year. Are there a ton of people around town outside of a Chris Hoke, who's always backed Mason Rudolph, who think that over a 13-game stretch, Mason Rudolph would suddenly reinvent himself and be the biggest story in the NFL? As much as I enjoyed the end of last season, I don't think that's what would happen. I think defenses would catch up to him.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but at least he showed what this offense could do and how they could score points. And, those last couple games when I was sitting in the press box watching, you felt like they could come back if they were ever down with him. With Kenny Pickett, you felt there was a ceiling, that you could only get to 16 points. And he's got to take that next step. He's got to show me I got to see with my own eyes. The eye test, that's for me. I want to see a guy take a step up in the pocket, look, survey the field, and then make a decision. I mean, he's quick to jump out, and maybe that's just a rookie thing, but, I know they want to give him...
Hold on. No. Don't let him off the hook. He's had 24 starts and appeared in 25 games. He's played more NFL football. He's taken more NFL snaps than Mason Rudolph has taken. I tire quickly of this. Maybe it's just Kenny Pickett has to learn these things. He's still new to the league. The guy who's barely played, who's played fewer games, who had a longer time where he just didn't see the field, looked far more assured and sure of himself and comfortable in the pocket and comfortable on the field. It's not an excuse for Kenny Pickett that he is a young player in this league. He's taken plenty of snaps, and this is the genesis of my biggest concern here and why I'm not sold and really not buying him as the Steelers franchise quarterback. You would have seen traits get flashed by this point in his career, Richie, him do great things that would convince you, okay, there's something in there. That's why they picked him. There literally has not been that kind of game yet from Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, when people use the record, that helps their argument. He has a good record, but his stats are awful. I'm going to look at the stats because the record, the defense helps with that, and other players help with that, but the stats have been downright awful so far as a starting quarterback. Let's go out to Steve in Ford City. How you doing, Steve? Steve, you there? You got to turn down your TV.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
One thing I've been following you guys all along, and one thing I don't hear about is, Kenny Pickett is good, and I always liked Mason Rudolph. But the fact is, if you look at the early parts of this game in the season, Kenny Pickett didn't have very much good offensive coverage. In other words, blocking to keep him in the pocket, keep him doing things he needed to do, where Mason Rudolph did. And if you look at any starting quarterback, and we'll go back to the Patriots with Tom Brady, nobody ever penetrated that line. He had plenty of time to pick where he wanted to throw and what he wanted to do.
Steve, I get what you're saying, and I don't want to. I hate to cut you off there. But I feel like I get what you're saying, and a lot of people might use that argument. But the fact is they didn't respect the pass. Defenses did not respect the pass, and that was part of the problem. But he never would stand in there and take a hit or a chance at taking a hit. A lot of times he got hit, he was running around.
Kenny Pickett displayed zero pocket sense and routinely panicked early, left clean pockets, and ran himself into pressure and ran himself into sacks. To suggest that he was somehow the victim of poor blocking while Tom Brady, who probably has the best pocket sense and in-pocket movement I've ever seen from a quarterback, despite not being mobile, to even put those two in the same sentence when talking about that specific subject, I think is lunacy. Tom Brady, you know why his pockets always looked clean? Because when the rush would start coming in from the edges, he did what any good quarterback does, and stepped up straight up in the pocket and made a throw with his eyes downfield. Kenny Pickett's doing reverse spins, pirouettes, running directly into pressure. I mean, he's the complete antithesis in the pocket when he drops back of what Tom Brady showed throughout his entire career.
So how is Arthur Smith going to fix this? And my second part of this question is, we've kind of already evaluated Kenny Pickett, but a lot of people think, maybe some of these experts think, that quarterbacks deserve 3 years. I mean, do you think he deserves another year?
No, I don't think he deserves one. I mean, the Jets were willing to move on from Zach Wilson after 2 years as the starter, and he was the second overall pick in the draft. So you'd actually feel like there might be more in there to mine with him, but they were done with it. They washed their hands of it. Kenny Pickett has had plenty of starts. The late Bill Walsh said you usually know what a guy is capable of after 25 starts in the league. Well, he's made 24 of them. I think he's had plenty of chances. The argument that continually gets made, that Omar Khan also made, is that the offensive coordinator was kind of a mess. Omar backed the old bus over Matt Canada today.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry. The head coach didn't even really want to fire him, it seemed like. That was more of an Art Rooney decision. It's hard for me to say you can blame the offensive coordinator when all parties involved chose to bring him back after Pickett's rookie season, and they were all saying flowery things about how much better it was all going to get.
So what you're saying, he deserves one more start. He had to get to 25 games.
Sure, give him one start, and unless I see 305 touchdowns, it's Mason time.
All right, we're going to take a break. Back in a couple minutes.